to the Village of Mount Pleasant Plan Commission meeting for April 17th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Meyer,
Here.
Risler. Here. Bhatia,
Here.
Washburn,
Here.
Van Beckham,
Here.
Driver.
Here. Next on the agenda will be the approval of the March 20th, 2024 Plan Commission meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairperson, I move to approve the March 20, 2024 minutes of the meeting.
Second.
Motion by Ram and seconded by Joe Meyer. Any further questions, concerns? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, under old business, 7111 Washington Avenue Certified Survey Map, CSM 24-1. Sam?
Mr. Chair, this is the CSM that was proposed to split the Delta Hotel in half. The Plan Commission tabled it last month because we didn't have an ordinance that legally allowed them to do so. That ordinance is on your agenda later today, essentially allowing 0 lot line setbacks in commercial districts for side yards if there's a shared wall. So we can get into that ordinance discussion a little bit later, but other than that, the CSM didn't change at all. So we recommend approval just contingent on the village board passing the ordinance, allowing that later on in the agenda. Other than that, same thing as last month. It meets all the other land division requirements.
All right, any questions on that?
No, I don't have a question, but Sam, I think for those who were not here at the last meeting, probably a quick overview would be helpful, to
Sure.
to recap.
Yeah, not a problem. So this is at 7111 Washington Avenue. They're looking to split the parcel in two, essentially cutting it in half north to south, where they are interested in potentially looking at other uses, potentially residential uses on the south half of the property while leaving the north half commercial. That complies with the comp plan, which actually has the parcel split through it as well. So, someone anticipated that at some point. It wasn't us. It's been on the comp plan for a long time, but it complies with the comp plan and is allowed. It meets the zoning regulations subject to that ordinance update on later in the agenda. And we don't really think this will affect the taxable value of the property for the time being. If they do come back for any, additional uses, conversions to residential or commercial additions on the front half or anything else, obviously those will have to go through the proper permitting procedures, whether that's Plan Commission, engineering, et cetera, building permits, those types of things. But other than that, they're just trying to keep the property flexible, and we don't have an issue with that.
Thank you, Sam.
All right.
Having said that, I'll make a motion to approve certified survey map 24-1 for 7111 Washington Avenue, as presented with, I don't think there were any conditions, other than the approval of the zoning code amendment.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Washburn, second by Reisler. Any further questions or comments? Any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, under new business, United Way of Racine County Campaign Kickoff Special Event Application.
Afternoon. We actually have 2 special event applications that have come through. I think I spoke a little bit to this in my staff report last month. Going forward, these particular applications today don't actually require any Plan Commission's approval based on the application, so we'll move those to staff reports going forward. But because this is with the new campus park, and we talked a little bit about it, we wanted to agenda the item, and we do have Matt Prohaska here to speak on the music series event, which is after this United Way one. So per our special event applications, we ask that and tell new applicants they may be required to attend a Plan Commission meeting. And so we want to keep everybody in the loop. This particular application is for United Way's campaign kickoff. This event had previously been last year at the Frakesville Beer Garden. They want to move over to Campus Park, incorporate some music aspects. They will be at Village Committee of the Whole on Monday for application for a temporary B license for alcohol. So it's going to be a little bit larger scale than what perhaps they had done previously. So we're happy to have them here. I'll be working with the applicant in the next couple months. We're actually meeting out at the park on Monday to kind of go over everything. So pretty straightforward application. I mean, we're very excited. It's going to be happening on Thursday, August 8th. It's after all of our summer playgrounds, so it'll be a nice continuation of activities throughout the summer here during the week at that park. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, the only question I really have is in regards to the application. They said they're going to have food trucks, but then they also say they're not going to be moving outside of the parking lot. So the food truck's going to be in the parking lot, or?
So when we designed that park, we had the vehicular traffic to allow the trucks to drive in and out of the park. So the area to the west of the band shell, it's like a concrete circle area. That's where all this power and additional supply is out there. So that would likely be where those trucks would be. And then they would exit out onto Campus Drive from there. So we can bring those trucks into the actual park safely.
Okay, because it says it's marked no. That's why they're,
Yeah, so this was, again, continuous discussions on over the next couple months exactly. That's why we're meeting out there Monday, so I could show them that. But that would be the ideal perspective for them to go.
yeah, I just was wondering if we count that as part of the driveway then? Or is that actually part of the park where they're going in there? That's what I'm saying. I'm just asking because it's checked off that they're not going to be doing that.
Gotcha.
That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
That seems like it might just be something in the application you need to fine tune or make it
Sure.
more clear, because I kind of understood what was that this is kind of in process,
Yep.
and that you are gonna have further discussions, and there were some things that obviously need to be tweaked as part of, their event, so.
Yeah, we're 4 months, just under 4 months away, so we need more detailed site map, different things that will come up, but there are still some uncertainties. Again, Monday there'll be a cow for temporary B. If that's not going to be part of the event, well, that changes some aspects, so it could be ever evolving. But again, the initial approval at the staff level has been granted, and we'll continue to work with them and support them.
I also thought your application was very, very concise and thought of things that I would never have thought of, I suppose. I'm not an event planner, but I felt it was very well-rounded, and you really took into account, I guess one of the questions I did have, and this is just in general to the application, when you're talking about sales and the exchange of money, and if there's more than one vendor, the village will charge $55 a resident. In other words, they have to pay, how do you calculate the residents?
Resident, that would be if the food truck is Mount Pleasant based. If you are a Milwaukee-based food truck and coming in, you would be paying a resident. They would have to pay.
Oh, it's just the one-time fee, so it's based
So
on
this-
the owner of the food truck or where
Yeah.
the company is.
To do just a quick history, we brought this application to the commission last year, I want to say, for review, and I'm not sure if you were on the commission.
I wasn't then.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
went through and kind of answered some of those specific
see.
questions. So,
Okay.
yeah, it gets us away from hounding them down for receipts and saying, well, give me 10% of your food sales for that particular day. Give them a flat rate. It could be most of the common is 10%, so it could be less than 10%. It could be more than 10%, depending on how successful their sales are. But we don't want to discourage anybody too. So, I think we actually lowered those rates from what they were before based on some feedback that was provided last year.
Okay, very good. Well, again, I think you've done a great job in promoting this, and we're starting to see now, early in the year, some of the success.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
No, again, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. Number one, I echo what Trustee Washburn said. My comment is, and my compliment, looks like that the process that you have laid out in the handout we got for the to register for a special event. You have covered it very well. And this, and correct me if I'm wrong, this will be the first event at the campus park, right?
Well, this one's not until August.
No, I know, but
So we will have, the Relay for Life will be there.
Okay.
Now, Relay for Life is a returning event, which is
Okay.
why they didn't have to come.
oh, I see, okay.
Which
Because I
is-
thought if it's the first event, but even if it's
Yep.
Relay for Life, it'll be interesting to see how well your process of what fine tuning you need to do, and because then after you actually put that into practice, then you find, but it looks pretty good to me, and my compliment, because again, all the process, it seemed to me that you covered all the boxes and dotted all the i's and crossed all the t's, so very pleased with that.
Yeah, well, we're a borrowing industry, and I have a lot of former colleagues who helped me work on this application at a previous job. So it was really easy of just swapping one agency out for another, but thank you.
And thank you to United Way for choosing our park for their event. I hope it helps to make it even more successful than last year. You always want to be better than last year. I hope last year was, a top year for you, so hopefully it will add to your draw. So, thank you for coming.
If I could just ask a couple questions of the applicant, if George is done?
I'm not sure if anybody, okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just, yeah, if you would, as you're walking up it, to the extent you can provide any feedback from the applicant's perspective, how the procedures and policies, application forms, I mean, basically, how was it to be the applicant? You're kind of the earliest guinea pig, I think.
Yeah, I think George has been very helpful in leading us through it. Jason Greenwood from AMI was actually the one who filled it out, but it seems like it went well. Yeah, it's obviously a little more than we had to do in previous years, but we're fine with that. I mean, we want to make sure that we're doing everything correctly, and appreciate you guys having us here.
Well, good. I suppose she should state her name for the record.
Stephanie Buchanan,
Address.
28908 Kramer Drive, Waterford.
Thank you,
Okay, all right, thanks.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're excused.
Okay,
Any other questions then of,
I don't think we need to vote on
if
this.
not, then we'll take it as recorded as presented.
All right.
Okay. Next on the agenda would be the Mount Pleasant Music Special Event Application.
Yeah, and similar to the previous application, it has been approved at the staff level. Matt Prohaska is here, so we can choose to invite him to speak first on the event, and then any follow-up questions for both of us, probably be easiest.
Sure.
All right.
And if I could just interject and ask, I mean, in your remarks, if you could just sort of address how the process has been, the policy, the requirements from your perspective.
Sure.
I'd be interested.
Excuse me. So I'm Matt Prohaska. I'm the new tourism manager for Mount Pleasant. I came into the role in about February. First day of work, they turned around and said, "Hey, we want you to plan a music series." Off we went. Here we are today. So the commission today is getting a little taste of what will be presented Monday. So we will be presenting to the village board as a whole of the concerts that's going to be playing. I'm going to hold those groups a little tighter just for a couple more days so you guys we'll get it to the board on Monday. But we have a four-part, I know everybody's like, oh, it's the best kept secret for the most part right now. We have a four-part music series, one in June, two in July, one in August. They're about 3 weeks apart. Starting June 18th is going to be our first concert for Mount Pleasant. They're going to be held on Tuesday nights. We are going to have food trucks available for people to eat, along with some activities with the YMCA and just kind of promoting our park that we have here. We're still in trying to figure out if we're going to be serving alcohol, or I should say beer, at these events, or if they're going to be carrying them in. We're finding that it's a little bit more difficult from a vendor's standpoint at this point to try to get them to commit or let alone return a telephone call. So it's still in the process. I mean, we still have time, but we're still trying to work out those details as best as possible because we want to, as soon as we announce the concert series, we want to be able to have that stuff in place if we are going to have vendors for beer this year or not. If not, we're going to work on it for next year. The process has been great. George has been an asset for us, especially coming in here with trying to work on some of the details and stuff. From an operational standpoint, we're coming up with operational plans. Obviously, this will be a first largest event that we have within the park. So we're working with police and fire to get more operational plans, the what-ifs, and stuff to that degree so that we have a plan in place that everybody is aware of in the event of an emergency. We don't plan on emergencies, but we want to make sure that we're ready and prepared for those in the event that we come. So that's the kind of gist of everything. If you guys were 2 weeks later, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about the bands, but I'm just going to hold those tight to you right now.
Billy Joel, one of them, considering?
You know, I mean, we've talked to his agent. Unfortunately, he's a little busy, but maybe next year. Okay, so we see we do have some good names that I think that you're going to find that will be recognizable coming up. So
Excellent.
any other questions? Yeah.
You know, the question over alcohol is always interesting at these events, and I grew up in the northern suburbs of Illinois, and Ravinia Park was extremely popular and sold their own alcohol, but also it became a thing to go to Ravinia and take your picnic basket and your crystal wine glasses and your hors d'oeuvres or dinner, you know, whatever. So I could see us, hopefully, if we allow the bring-in, I could see that really creating a fun atmosphere for those that wanted to participate that way. If we don't have, you know, or if we can't do a combination of both, service and bring in your own, or...
Yeah, and that's some of the things that, you know, through researching and learning this aspect of this position, we found that there is, if you were a vendor, there's going to be obviously restrictions. We'll be able to work with that aspect. We've reached out to Kenosha, for example. Kenosha does peanut butter and jams down there. For years, they have said, we've never had beer or wine available, but people have brought it in and they've had no problems. So that's some of the concerns that we have of what does the future look like. You know, we're not booking bands in my opinion that would potentially be problematic. That's not our goal here. Our goal here is to promote a family-friendly environment. But those are things that obviously we're taking into consideration and looking for and making sure that we can address all those as they come.
Thank you.
Ron?
Well, not that we want to keep talking about the alcohol, but on the subject, if you already haven't talked, and I'm assuming you have, one of the recommendations I would have is, you know, to discuss with the people like Mike and Molly who host the beer garden. They do a fantastic job of managing and taking under control and in compliance. So that could be a good vendor, either to talk to them or learn from them.
I will say they have been a phenomenal resource for us. That has been discussions that we've had with them. What it's sounding like it's more or less coming down to is insurance. Cost of insurance potentially for a vendor. Now there's a difference between a brewery and a vendor like Ken. If we were to look at like one of us, for example, they're going to fall under different regulations. But the insurance costs, is, from what I'm understanding, are potentially high. So as a vendor, I could see where they're having to outweigh costs compared to their costs. So it's a work in progress. If it's something that we can definitely look at, we are looking at for the future, how are we going to work with that stuff and address that?
Sure. Any further questions? If not,
All right, thank you. So Monday night, Village Board, you'll know. All right,
I'll be there.
Thank you.
So will Rob.
all right, thank you.
Any other further questions for me on it? I will not be performing. I will,
You are not.
You're
I am
not the
not, I am
secret?
not performing, so.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
Thank you, George. All right, next on the agenda is the Spring Street Site Plan Review SP 2314 Approval Extension Request.
There we go. Chair and members of the commission. So the code of ordinances allow or prohibit site plan approvals from extending more than a year unless someone builds a permit or something like that. But there is a provision that an applicant can come in and ask the plan commission for an extension request. Fiduciary did just that. If you remember, they have a site north of Spring Street, and last year we approved a 320-unit development at that site. It's already zoned appropriately. It's essentially good to go. In the year, we've been working through a lot of utility issues to serve the site. The village board has approved a plan to serve this in coordination with New Educators HQ and some other developments out there with some new water extending west down Spring Street and then south down the frontage road. So as we've worked through those issues, that's currently in design. They wanted to just be a little bit proactive and make sure that, their site plan doesn't actually expire until a couple months from now, but they want to get a little bit ahead of it just to make sure that they were covered and weren't coming in after the fact or anything. The site plan hasn't changed in any way, shape, or form, and the ordinances haven't changed in any way that would affect the previous approval. So from those respects, we're all good with their extension request, and we are in active talks with them to start the project as soon as we can. So hopefully this is us just being proactive, but it's not super necessary. Other than that, Paul's here from Fiduciary, so let me know if you have any questions.
Questions, Tom?
Sam, how long are we extending this for?
I believe in here we asked for another year. Is that?
As you know, I kind of got the materials on the fly. It could be here and I just didn't pick it up, but I didn't quickly see it anywhere.
Yeah, if it's not in the letter, a year should be more than enough time, unless you have any issue with that, Paul.
No, that was our intention.
Yeah.
I just would recommend to the chairman that if we make a motion to approve, we should make sure that that deadline is put in the motion, subject to, 1 year, so it's clear.
The only
1
comment,
year from now or 1 year from the expiration of the previous approval?
It does not matter to me. So if you want to make it clean, it's probably cleanest to do it 1 year from today.
Sam, just to chime in with this, because of a change of ordinances, would this need, even if if the approval expired, would it actually need to come back to Plan Commission at all?
No, not really. But it would require a full new site plan submission at that time.
Okay,
So they're just kind of extending the approval, not necessarily which body it's going to.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Frank, in kind of as a follow-up to your question, I certainly don't have a problem, since they are coming in advance, of making this 1 year from the previous approval, which gives them deadline, which gives them an extra month or two, but their deadline's not up yet. And I think that Fiduciary has been an excellent resident and developer for us in Mount Pleasant. And a lot of their holdup has seriously been because of the project across the street that hasn't started performing yet in TID 7. So I certainly support giving them as much time as they need.
Sam, I would just think as a matter of consistency, the policy should be 1 year from either today for any applicant or 1 year from the termination date of the original approval. It doesn't matter to me, but I think you guys should suggest.
We can do from the original date of approval if that's what people want. That would be June 21st of 2023.
sense.
So
That makes sense.
that would take them to June 21st of 2025.
All right.
Makes sense. All right, with that, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Spring Street Site Plan Review SP 23-14 approval for the extension request from Fiduciary for 1 year from the previous expiration date of
Second.
June 2024. Sorry.
Second.
We have a motion by Washburn, a second by Van Beckham. Any further questions or comments? Public comments? Hearing none, I'll call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the ordinance 424 for 117 Spring Street.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the applicant applied with permission from the owner to amend the zoning map for the property from AG2 to RM2 to accommodate a 240-unit moderate-density multifamily building development. The applicant is Continental Properties. They're here for questions if you have them with a short presentation after I'm done. The application follows the residential areas, including churches, multifamily designation of the land use element. Neither the master bike plan nor the parks and open space plan contain any recommendations for the subject property. As you can see in the printout, can we, on the PowerPoint, actually go back one slide? Thank you. You can see that there is a proposed road that's Carrington Boulevard extending further northwards from where it currently stubs out. That's not an exact location of where the road is going to go. It'll probably be a little bit tighter up against those wetland areas, but that road is considered to be part of this project. For at least the road portion that's adjacent to this subject property. Moving on, the RM2 zoning district allows the uses described in 90-310-1, which includes 3 or more households per lot use by right. The village staff would review any site plans for compliance with the ordinances. This is just the zoning map, so the draft site plan that you got in there will likely change before they come back for site plan approval. And just a reminder, as a note, that any land division document to dedicate the right-of-way would be subject to Plan Commission and Village Board review, as is the zoning map amendment, but the actual site plan, because it's purely residential in nature, is handled at the staff level. So if you approve this map amendment and they move forward with it, you won't see the site plan come forward to you all per the text amendment we modified about a year ago. Moving on, in terms of fiscal impact analysis, you can see the general projected numbers within the packet that you were provided. It has a revenue to cost ratio of 3-to-1 and a private to public ratio of 72-to-1. Those are both above our targets. So the project performs adequately based on the current information that we have. And we don't recommend any conditions for approval. This is an area that's master planned for residential development and has adjacent multifamily and commercial uses. So part of the TID project plan, it's kind of just time for this one to go. So with that, I'll turn it over
Time to go, Katie.
I'll turn it over to Continental. Jennifer, if you could switch the PowerPoint,
I just have
please.
one quick question before we go
Yeah.
back to that other screen. What's that little triangle in the front along Spring Street there?
It's just part of the parcel. That'll likely be cleaned up as part of the road dedication and sale closing process. So it'll be an even rectangle parcel when it gets sorted out. Yeah, that's just how it's existing. It's actually the property owner with that and the western parcel are the same property owner. So they are just negotiating with one land seller either way, and it'll get cleaned up.
Okay, thanks.
The next slide.
I have a slide thing. Otherwise, Jennifer's in the back. You can just call her.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Katie Skelton with Continental Properties. I'm here to present the concept development plan. Perfect, thank you. There we go. Continental is a owner-operator of real estate development projects based out of Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. We are an owner-operator in the United States. We've done over 125 developed communities, over 35,000 homes built to date. We're across 19 different states, one of NMHC's top 25 developers with over 44 years of experience. We pride ourselves in having a vertically integrated team. We have market research, product design and development, and construction oversight in-house that are engaged from site selection until stabilization. All of our communities feature on-site property management. And with over 35,000 homes, we have our customer experience team that understands our customers' diverse opinions. And our portfolio management is in-house since we are a long-term owner-operator. Now we can get into the development plan. As Sam mentioned, the site we're looking at is just south of Spring Street, north of the Aurora off of Washington Avenue.
Wow, makes it look close. You know, you never realize how far.
Here is an example of our site plan. We modified our site plan slightly from what Sam was mentioning. We shifted Carrington Boulevard further to the west to align with where it would intersect to the north, so the development to the north at that intersection would line up. So because of that, we are now proposing 280 units of garden-style multifamily homes. We'll be constructing the extension of Carrington Boulevard from Spring Street down to the southern property boundary and extending public utilities throughout Carrington. We're showing 2 stormwater management ponds on site, which total 12% detention. And with this, we are seeking a rezone from agricultural to RM2 to allow our density of 15.4 dwelling units an acre. Our site plan currently shows our 2-story product, which are 20-unit building pads. Our product has varying architectural elements, including flat panel, board and batten, lap siding, and masonry. Here's an example of our product. This is a product in Illinois. As you can see, we have thoughtfully landscaped walkways and beautiful curb appeal. All of our units are specifically designed with customer safety in mind, so every time a resident is opening a door, it's a door to their own home. There's no shared common areas or walkways that they need to go through. Now getting into some of our resident amenities, here we have our resident clubhouse. This is where we have our on-site property management team, and we also have a free coffee bar with Wi-Fi where residents can hang out and work. In our clubhouse, we also feature a 24-hour fitness center. And outside our clubhouse, we have our resort-style pool with a sun deck for ample seating, and we have a grill area as well. Our customers can also enjoy the car care center, the pet spa, and a leash-free pet park. We offer varying unit types to cater to our resident demographics. So there's a range of studios, 1-bed, 2-bed, and 3-bed housing options. Here's an example of our interiors. We feature bright, modern, open concept floor plans with ample lighting and premium finishes. All of our units feature hardwood style flooring, in-home laundry, and energy efficient appliances. Here's an example of our unit bedrooms, which also feature nice walk-in closets. All of our garden style homes feature attached and detached garage options. Continental has a proven track record as an owner-operator of multifamily communities, and we are committed to ensure the success of a new community in Mount Pleasant. I would now like to open it up to see if there's any questions.
Go ahead, Tom.
I noticed being a grandparent of toddlers, I'm always curious if you expect children in this development. If so, I don't see any playgrounds or recreational spots for kids.
We would expect around 40 school-age children, and with that, it's a range from preschool up to high school, so it's typically around 2 to 3% of preschoolers, 2% elementary school, and 3 to 4% high schoolers. So we find that because of that age range, there's not a lot of children that play on the playground, since we have a percentage of high school and percentage of preschoolers that wouldn't utilize those facilities.
I also want to remind you, Tom, there's a public park that's very close to this site. That would just be a 5-minute walk away.
Oh.
So
Well, how convenient.
that's taken
Great.
care of in the Parks and Open Space plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. You know, we have such an amazing park district that we've created that to burden, you know, the developer with more open space so that a couple of kids can play, you know, I'm not sure it makes sense in an apartment building. Love the idea of the pet center. Love the idea of the car area, the car maintenance, vacuum and so forth. I think that's an awesome amenity in today's world. And it did answer my question as to who was gonna build the road. That's all I have.
Are these rental or owner occupied?
They're rental units.
Rental units. Okay, the application states 240 units, but I thought I heard you saying 280.
Yes, because we moved the Carrington Boulevard further to the west, we were able to fit 2 more building pads, and we had to move Carrington further west to line up with that northern roadway so that it's a through intersection.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, originally it went off their property, so.
Any other questions or concerns for Katie?
Assuming your zoning goes through, when do you think you would start?
We anticipate breaking ground in fall of this year.
I think so.
Okay. There's no further questions?
So, Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to, are there any other questions? No? Okay. I would make a motion to approve ordinance 4-2024, is that right?
Correct.
For the site, for the 13117 Spring Street zoning map amendment, ZMA 24-2.
Second.
Motion by Washburn, second by Reisler. Any other comments or questions? Any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, County Trunk Highway H Site Plan Review, SP 24-7.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, on behalf of Microsoft, Walter Bronson from Dewberry applied for site plan for review for the next phase of the Microsoft development in Area 3A of TID 5. That's generally west of the tracks, south of Braun Road, east of County Trunk Highway H, and north of KR. As you can see on the map, this is the site that's kind of generally surrounds that ATC substation that's out there and is across H from Foxconn. The application is for the grading permission only, similar to the last time this went through what we did on 3B on the other side of the tracks. This will be kind of a multi-phased site plan review application because the site's so large. They obviously want to start grading, and then they kind of work through a design build process where they'll finalize their site, be back in a couple months for their general site plan to start foundations, and then there will likely be fine tunings of that site plan moving forward through it. So as of now, this is kind of the general grading, so you have the massing building plans in front of you, but expect to see more as they come forward. And also as a reminder, these go to the village board as well because they're in TID 5. The site that they're looking to do is approximately 115 acres on the southern portion of the property, south of the Lamperrick Creek there. Like I said, they'll come back with detailed building designs. The Parks and Open Space Plan for the village lists the area as a priority protection area within the Pike River Watershed Plan. Therefore, the applicant should use environmentally sensitive design practices within the development areas such as river corridor protection and good stormwater pond design. Microsoft committed $4 million to the restoration of the Lamperrick Creek throughout the property, both east and west of the tracks, and has coordinated with Root Pike Wind on environmental restoration projects within the area. So we have all the confidence that they're doing above and beyond restoring that corridor area. The Village Mount Pleasant Master Bike Plan recommends a bicycle pathway along H, which WSDOT installed in coordination with Claude, and the the county and everyone else who got their hands in the road reconstruction projects out there when we reconstructed H. The application meets the lot, principal building siting, accessory building siting regs. We'll review the principal building design and building height when the applicant applies for subsequent site plan review. We do expect 2 variances for some of the transparency requirements and for commercial buildings, as well as the wall height that they went through last time for a similar sound attenuation wall kind of around the southern portion of the property, which you can see on the site plan. They've drawn in where that wall will go. Those variances will be, likely later this summer when they'll be in front of Board of Appeals for those. The uses are allowed by right for all the uses shown on the site plan. We'll review building plans later on. Parking and access plans are met, and we'll review those in detail when they submit the final building designs. In terms of landscaping and screening, there is the sound wall that I mentioned along the west, south, and a portion of the north area. The Board of Appeals granted the applicant a variance for a similar sound wall in Area 3B, but that variance in 3B it's not for Microsoft, it's for the parcel, which is why they need to come back for this separate parcel on the west side of the tracks. In terms of fiscal impact, I think a fun thing that we did for this project when I was doing the fiscal impact analysis is I actually took in the 1.4 billion minimum guaranteed value, including all the land purchases, the existing Area 2 development across the street, and the minimum guarantee of that 1.4 billion for Areas 2 and all of Area 3. And so basically all of Microsoft's committed obligations are included within this fiscal impact analysis. It's not for this specific site, because that's how our development agreement kind of anticipates it. With all of that, the numbers get good. We'll just say the total revenue to cost ratio is 6 to 1. We typically have a 1 to 1 minimum revenue to cost ratio, and their private to public ratio is 124 to 1, and 40 to 1 is break even. So they're about 3 to 6 times more than our general baseline for the amount of infrastructure that they are surrounding. So it's pretty good. And as previously stated, this serves as a master planning document, so they'll be back for detailed site plan reviews. All the conditions that we recommend are subject to essentially them coming back for those site plan reviews, the 5 that you see in front, including architectural building plans, scaled and dimensioned site plan for parking, landscaping, lighting, and just the application process in and of itself. But on the whole, they meet all the ordinances for this next phase, and we have no issue with them, following the site plan to get their grading work underway. Last note is this was also submitted to Public Works and engineering, and they've all reviewed it and are making their way through that process as well. So with that, it's a recommendation for approval, and that's all I got.
I just have one comment. On your spreadsheet, could you actually change that column width so it's easier to read those numbers? I know it's unusual because it's so large for this development, but it's like, what in the heck?
Yeah, I can. Normally we don't have that third set of zeros at the end, so I'll make sure to mess with that next time.
And I need to put it in scientific notation.
Yeah, exactly.
Sam, if you could educate me a little bit, I've not seen anything where we're just doing grading permission.
Yeah,
So when I read that, I'm thinking, well, we're going to be asked to look at topographical scale maps and civil engineering type plans, but that's not part of this package.
No,
nor is that our expertise.
That's not actually part of your delegated authority.
So what is it that I'm to look at, and what is it that I'm to approve?
To start the site plan itself, which you have in front of you, to start grading on a property, you need to approve a site plan per the ordinances. But because the site's so large and it contains multiple buildings, they've chosen to give you a site plan, and then we'll come back to amend that site plan over time. Most sites not being 115 acres, they typically just give us everything at once, so you don't really see a secondary or tertiary approval process, because on a Taco John's, they're just like, here you go. So, you know, sometimes we'll include grading plans if we have them in smaller site plans. Sometimes we don't. It, you know, depends on what we get at the time. But yeah, the site plan, the location of the buildings, all of that is what you are technically approving here.
Yeah, and I'm okay not looking at site grading plans because I don't have any expertise and it doesn't seem to be our commission's job anyways.
No.
So just if I can restate it then in a simple sense, what we're being asked to consider and approve is to authorize the owner to go ahead and grade in a fashion that contemplates the eventual construction of the building shown on the site plan.
That's it.
Okay, and that seems to, all right, fine, now I understand a little bit better.
Any other questions?
Todd is here from Microsoft, Claude is here, if you have any questions, but this one pretty straightforward. We'll see, again, the detailed one in a couple months, so.
I do have a question. So on the first phase, when we approved the tall wall, as I remember, it was.
You didn't approve the tall wall. The Board of Appeals approved the tall wall.
Well, we as a village.
Sure.
You are zoning board of appeals. Thank you for correcting me. When they approved for us that wall, as I remember, that it was set back a little bit. And I guess my only concerns, and this is just because I live on KR, you know, as we drive down that corridor and we come up to 90th Street, the Microsoft is set off a little bit. Now, with this site plan, the substation, those are the big buildings, aren't they? The tall buildings? No, they're the two.
Oh, there's other buildings that are there as well. But remember, so Site 3B, as an example that they're currently working on, that's 215 acres. This is 115, folks, trying to fit the same amount of stuff in, 115 acres compared to 215 acres. So that's why the height difference. So that's why they have to go for the variances that they're looking for. And the wall will be closer, no doubt, but it's not gonna be any closer than ATC is, that's currently on Highway H now, with the similar type walls.
And it's
Put murals on them?
it's pretty
Or
small.
grow some vines on them or something?
You can see the setback on the south side, the west side of the property along H, so that the closest building corner is 271 feet away. The sound wall is probably 100-ish feet closer to street from that, but you're still talking about a 100 to 150 foot setback off the right of way.
And this, the Lampera Creek impedes this particular parcel more so than the other, than 3B, the creek is way back.
It bends southwards here and then kind of north when you get to 3B, which is why the land allowances almost are, flip-flopped from the west to the east side.
Okay, just a comment, I certainly don't have a problem with it otherwise.
There's no further questions or comments. Look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of the County Highway H site plan review SP-24-7, subject to the condition for approval as presented.
Second.
Okay, we had a motion by Bhatia and a second by Meyer. Any further questions or comments? None, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Keep them coming.
Keep building.
All right, next we will move on to Ordinance 6, 2024, amending the Code of Ordinances.
So this is the one we briefly discussed earlier. The village allowed commercial buildings with zero lot line setbacks under the previous business zoning district setback regulations. When we merged those commercial and industrial districts together late last year, this regulation was lost. The ordinance that in front of you reinserts the allowance for commercial buildings with zero lot line setbacks when walls are shared in commercial districts. And as a reminder, this circumstance already exists in Mount Pleasant. For example, the commercial shopping center containing Kohl's and Festival Foods contains multiple properties that share commercial walls. We believe this complies with the comp plan, and you can see the draft changes in front of you. The big one is obviously allowing 0 or 5, 0 or 10, et cetera, with the call out that the village permits 0 lot line setbacks when walls are shared. There's a couple other, when we're opening up the commercial district, there's just a couple other general typo fixes and odds and ends things that you can see in there, clearer references to other sections, and yeah, that's about it. So, do you have any questions? Let me know. Other than that, pretty straightforward.
No questions of Sam?
No, Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of ordinance 6-2024 to the village board.
Second.
Motion by Bhatia, second by Rizzler. No further questions? Call it question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is ordinance 724.
This is another one we talked about previously. Since the village adopted architectural standards in October 2023, the Board of Appeals has received multiple variance requests regarding the new standards. Many of the building plans subject to those variance requests were designed before the village adopted the new standards, so we understand why they were coming. These were applicants kind of caught in the middle between design and ultimate asking for approval. However, whenever we receive multiple variance requests regarding the same thing, we kind of go into an automatic review process to be like, why is this happening? Let's take a look at the ordinances, particularly because these were so new, we wanted to do that as well. So what we did in this is the update adds an alternative compliance option similar to both the parking and landscaping sections, which already have an alternative compliance option that gives the applicants an alternative route to gain architectural approval. What we did is identify multiple different elements of value to the village in relation to kind of aesthetic standards regarding a site, and they would have to meet those options to gain alternative compliance. So, getting into the actual meat of the ordinances, we have a few changes. One first major change is regarding the building roofs. We kept in the sloping requirements, but for the parapets, we moved the reference to or as required by building codes, because it's always required by building codes, so it's just kind of extra language that doesn't mean anything. And then we get into the alternative compliance. So to accommodate creativity in architectural design and to allow for flexibility in addressing site-specific development, redevelopment challenges, the community development director may approve alternative compliance architectural plans sealed by an architect licensed to practice in the state of Wisconsin. To approve an alternative compliance plan, the community development director must find that one or more of the following conditions or opportunities are present. The subject site has space limitations, unusual shape, or other factors that make strict compliance with applicable architectural regulations impossible or impractical. Physical conditions on or next to the site, such as topography, soils, vegetation, or existing structures or utilities, are such that strict compliance is impossible, impractical, or of no value in terms of advancing the general purposes of this division. Safety considerations, such as intersection visibility, utility locations, etc., make alternative compliance necessary, or 4 creative alternative architectural plans will provide an equal or better means of meeting the intent of this division's regulations. I'm going to stop there. That section is basically a mirror of the landscaping and the parking sections. So we changed like landscaping and screening to architectural in that, but those are the same 4 qualifications that I'm empowered to look at in the other sections. So that's just a kind of copy paste there. And then we get into the actual things that we're looking for, which is B, to approve an alternative compliance plan. The community development director must find that the plan includes at least 3 of the following. 1, the inclusion of green infrastructure as defined in the ordinances, or infrastructure found in sustainable development or green building certifications from nationally recognized organizations, such as the International Code Council, the U.S. Green Building Council, the International Living Future Institute, or the U.S. Green Building Initiative, or sites. That's really getting after programs like LEED certification, where there are typically very extensive checklists and application procedures that people need to go through. So if someone was to prove that they were going after LEED certification and gave us their LEED checklist saying we're going after LEED Silver on this project, and here are the things that we need to include, and if they explain to us, to meet efficiency standards, we're having difficulty with roof pitches, so here's why we're going after LEED. That's kind of how we're viewing that, right? So they're giving us evidence of the thing that they're applying for and looking at as part of the building design process. It's not just them saying, we want to go after LEED at some point in the future. Two,
Process has to start first.
yeah, exactly. Two would be the inclusion of safety-focused street design elements, such as those found within the National Association of City Transportation Officials Urban Street Design Guide. Those are, the NACTO Street Design Guide are essentially like very progressive pedestrian safety things that go way above and beyond kind of the standard village spec. So things like speed tables and curb bump outs are like the low end, but also includes things like buffered bike lanes and, you know, creative street design solutions like that. So if someone was attempting to go after those, but that limited their site design for architectural standards, that would be something of value aesthetically for the site, where we thought that would be a nice trade-off. And certainly advances kind of the pedestrian bicycle focus that the Plan Commission has had over the last 5-10 years. 3 would be the development of the parcel exceeds a 1-to-1 revenue to cost ratio and a 40-to-1 private to public ratio in the community development director's fiscal analysis of the development. We want to include a fiscal element because obviously sometimes there are designs that are going way above and beyond in terms of value, but maybe they're not meeting kind of the general architectural guidelines. So that's a way for an applicant to prove like, hey, we're putting a lot of money into this building. We're going to use really nice materials. It's not in the way that you've kind of prescribed, but here's evidence that, you know, we're going to treat this nicely. It's not just like 4 sides of EFIS or something like that. And then 4, the plans include a unique design from a renowned architect, which the community development director believes will generate tourism from the architectural design itself, not the underlying use. So this would be something where you get in, you know, a national firm and they're really designing something that one would conceivably go to visit. There was, I think the most recent example in Mount Pleasant a couple years ago, there was a house listed for sale that was, you know, from one of the understudies of Frank Lloyd Wright over by the golf courses there that received national attention because it had a single owner and was the first time it was up for sale. Something like that where it's gaining national attention from like a historic or notable architect is something that we would look for in new applications as well. So if you have a big firm with someone who's bringing someone in saying, hey, we're going to really do this up from a building design standpoint, that's what we would see there. If there was a question about whether it would generate tourism, obviously we have a on-staff tourism manager and a tourism commission that we can also go to if we have questions on, you know, whether they think the design would meet those standards or not. So we really wanted to call that one out because it's someone going truly above and beyond. It's not just like, educators did a great job in their building design, but no one's going to go to the educators HQ for its building design. So trying to separate that from something truly notable. And then finally, the inclusion of amenities specifically referenced in the comp plan, the parks and open space plan, the bike and ped plan, a local area plan, a TID project plan, or a village RFP. So if they're coming in and saying, hey, we've read your master planning documents, we really want to incorporate those things, but the inclusion of those elements might limit us in meeting the general architectural guidelines, then that allows us to use that as an acceptable trade-off. And just a reminder, they need to meet 3 of those 5 identified things. So it's pretty high bar for them to come through here. And for commercial buildings, which are the subject of these general the variance requests that we've gotten so far, an additional reminder that those commercial buildings have to go to Plan Commission. So while it's delegating me the authority to entertain that, the Plan Commission will also get a crack at those site building plans as well. So you can always overrule me if you think, hey, this doesn't really meet it, you're being too nice to them or something like that. So that is the long and short of how we're trying to provide essentially a second avenue of options as we do in other areas of the code while still holding some strict standards and meeting it. The last thing that we included before I open it up to questions is under the zoning variances section. We added a prohibited variance that is you cannot apply for a variance to waive, modify, or otherwise vary an alternative compliance procedure. So applicants may apply for variances from the standard zoning regulations or follow alternative compliance procedures when offered, but not both. So we didn't want someone to be able to say, I'm going to apply for a variance, but I only meet 2 of the options, not the 3 required. That shouldn't really be subject to a variance because you're already be given an alternate route for it. If you truly have like a unique circumstance, then you can always just apply for a variance. So, this is not we don't allow variances from procedures, we allow variances from the underlying code. And this is just stating that in very clear terms.
I think it's outstanding. I mean, that's really more than what I was expecting.
Good. Yeah.
I'm not speaking for anyone else, but for me personally, when we discuss this goes above and beyond what I thought, so good.
So,
Sam, can I ask just a general question for you?
Sure.
When ordinances are being written or substantially revised like this one, who gets involved other than you and Robin? Does the village council look at these things, or does the administrator look at these types of changes? There's some threshold when you feel, hey, it's technical, we can just, fine tune it, or it's major, we got to get this approved or looked at by other people?
Yeah, all of the above. We always talk to Chris and Village Legal on potential changes, particularly large ones that are coming up, or ones, for instance, this kind of messes with variance procedures, so that's one where we always look to double check. But in general, yeah, the same thing. I have weekly meetings with the village administrator, and I always brief her on the stuff that's coming up and generally the content of those things. We have discussions at department head meetings where I loop in the other department heads on kind of major changes that are coming forward to see if Public Works or Finance or anyone else has any input on those types of things. And those conversations are really fruitful. I think the best example is when we were adopting the zoning code, we included a thing when issuing certificate of occupancies that applicants had to give us their construction numbers, which is generally good procedure, but we included it via ordinance. So Dan, the village assessor, had a little bit more teeth in ordinance to get those things, so people couldn't come in and challenge their assessment on a brand new build because Dan had, the underlying numbers to figure it out. So we always try to include those things, but yeah, even before that, Robin and I try to seed the conversations here at Plan Commission, listen to your feedback, and then also plenty of internal conversations as well.
All right, well, thanks. That sounds very thorough.
If I can add just a little bit, and my original idea of this was a lot different as far as creating a new kind of evaluation table, matrix procedure. And it was Sam's and I very good idea to curtail it to mirror parts of the code that are already existing and already have approved and been vetted by the village attorney. So it's a less and new uncharted waters. So it's something that's already kind of in the code just elsewhere, and that's good practice.
And also, with the caveat always when we're doing these updates that we'll probably be back to fine tune this in the future. Particularly for architectural standards, I would not be surprised if this is something that we're looking at more frequently than many of the other sections, because architectural standards in general are, beauty is in the eye of a beholder thing. So you're trying to create an objective approval process for a subjective opinion, and there's a lot of gray area in between there. So we're trying to do our best, but we'll likely be back to fine tune this in the future as we test it and see how people use it, if there's complaints or we feel like people are able to game the system or something like that, so.
Good.
My only comment would be in regards to I see you left in here that we enclose flat roofs with the parapets at least 36 inches high. I'm assuming that that's for the last months we had the Evergreen Academy. I don't know if they got their variance or not.
We did not have a quorum, so they're up again tonight. So we'll see if they do or do not.
Okay, because otherwise, I would think that, again, they should be having to go back and meet some of these other requirements.
If their variance is denied, they will have to do that because, we can't hold them to these standards right now just due to timing. But yeah, if the Board of Appeals does deny their variance, there is a thing that you can't apply for a variance again for within a year. And So if they want to pull a building permit for that within the year, they would either have to add the 36-inch parapet or go to this if the village board approves this ordinance on Monday night. So
Okay.
it'll give them more options than they previously had. I don't know if it'll give them a lot less work to do, but.
Well, I think that this is something that and again, it's something that the zoning board of appeals should be looking at what we're looking at doing so that they can go, wait a minute, there's going to be a way for you to do something different.
Yeah, we'll certainly brief them on it.
Okay.
They can't base a denial on like a pending ordinance, but we will certainly make sure that they know that there is stuff to try to address or variances that they've seen. I mean, we had like 4 variance Board of Appeals meetings, I think all of last year, maybe 6, and we've already had 4 this year, and a large part of it is due to these architectural standards. So they'll be happy to know that we're trying to address it and reduce their workload at the same time.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sam or Robin? If not, a motion?
Well, I got one other thing. In the packet, there was this, in regards to Article 300, and you made some changes, and I see down in, what is this, Division 9320, down in number 3, let's see.
Is that the commercial vehicle stuff, Joe?
Yeah. Yeah, what is that in for? What are we
Yeah.
working on there?
That's the next item that we'll get to. So I think
Oh, okay, sorry.
just need a
Yep, nope.
vote on this one, then
Got it.
we'll dig into that one.
Thank you. It's separate. Perfect.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 7-2024, amending Division 90-405 for architectural standards.
Second.
Motion by Washburn, second by Risler. Any other questions or comments? Then I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, so this last one we have in front of you is kind of the last general one that we had. This one wasn't as time sensitive, so I didn't include it in official ordinance because I wanted a little bit more of your feedback for discussion. But generally, what we talked about last month when we approved that truck parking use out near the interstate is that some of the commercial truck parking ordinances were a little bit haphazard as we've gone in. So this is an effort for us to simplify them while keeping the same standards. So what we did in here is I took the existing vehicular uses and then essentially consolidated them down into commercial vehicle uses, personal vehicle uses, vehicle body and paint finishing shops, and then parking non-accessory. So we're splitting those out into essentially an active use regarding commercial parking, an active use regarding personal vehicle parking, paint and body finishing shops, which we have listed out separately because those are often kind of the highest complaints and or violators of ordinances regarding vehicles historically, and then parking lots is the last one. So one of the qualifiers, the parking non-accessory was in a different part of the commercial standard, so we just brought that down under vehicular use to kind of consolidate all of those together. As a reminder, a facility that provides both accessory parking and non-accessory parking is classified as non-accessory parking. So we're being overly strict if someone has a parking lot for users that they're also leasing out for other people. They have a more strict set of standards to follow, and those are limited in more areas than general parking lots that are related to the subject use. We kept the use-specific conditions of approval in there. So that is A, overnight for things that need a conditional use. Overnight outdoor vehicle storage is limited to a maximum of 6 vehicles. So this is to protect neighborhood areas where you might see like a small, historically like used car sales area or a small, auto detailer or something like that. We have landscaping and screening standards. they can count those. They can still store some stuff outside, but they can't have we're going to use every square inch of a lot for outdoor vehicle parking. If it's, generally in a C2 area or a C3 area where it's adjacent to residential uses and those types of things. Same thing for fuel sales are subject to a maximum limit of 8 fuel pumps. So this was Robin's great idea when we were writing the code of, there are neighborhood gas stations and those things should be allowed, but your 36 pump Quick Trip probably shouldn't be allowed in a neighborhood. So that's where we're trying to delineate. You can have a small gas station in a neighborhood commercial district, but you can't have a huge one. What that's really helped us do is filter out a lot of, we have had requests since we adopted this for gas stations in more neighborhood settings, and this has prohibited those just because they look at it and they're like, oh, we're going to have 10 or 12 or whatever. Most people don't build a little neighborhood gas station anymore, but this has helped us moderate those requests. And that's 8 fuel pumps specifically. It's not 8 fuel stands where they could double side it and have 16. So it's like the actual pump that you're using.
So what if it were power charging stations?
Those are allowed by right separately in the ordinance, any number, but they still have to meet the parking lot standards and the screening standards. We have had 1 or 2 requests for e-charging stations. And the difficulty that some of those people have had is they typically, particularly on a large interior site, we don't consider the actual charging stand mechanical equipment that you're pulling like the charger off of, but they often have to locate transformers and things close, which is pretty clearly mechanical equipment, and that needs to be screened from view. And so that is something that applicants are still trying to work through, and we think that's a fair balance of allowing them while still having some aesthetic standards for similar type of uses. Typically those charging stations don't have huge canopies and stuff like a gas station, so they're a little bit less obnoxious to the public, but if it comes with 8 transformers next to it, then you're starting to get into the same realm. So that's how we view those things. And then finally, we're looking at moving one of the requirements that was previously under the parking regs up into the use standards as one of the conditional use standards, and that's the village shall not approve new parking non-accessory uses within a tax increment district. So it just flat prohibits parking lots in a TID that aren't related to a building or a use or other types of things. And so that's how we're trying to limit particularly on the commercial vehicle side, the large truck lots from going in areas that the village is also investing in utilities or other expensive things where we'd expect a higher tax return than something that doesn't provide any buildings would provide. So, and then we have a couple remaining things here. The existing parking access regulations regarding alternative plans and layout for large vehicles, semi-tractor, truck, and trailer parking. We have one of the sections that's each tractor trailer space shall count towards a directly proportional number of standard spaces. So essentially, if you're providing a really big spot, you have to add, it ends up being like 4 to 7 trees, depending on how big of a commercial vehicle spot it is. As opposed to just a single thing. I should correct that. It's like 1 tree. Normally it's like 4 normal parking spots equal 1 tree, but like 1 essentially like semi-parking spot would count as like somewhere between 4 and 8 normal spots, depending on how big they are. So you're looking at 1 to 2 trees per commercial vehicle parking spot. We're thinking about, and I need to talk it through with Robin and the organizational stuff, but moving that to the landscaping and screening sections to more clearly call that out for interior parking lot landscaping. And then the final one is we are going to keep our taxable primary structure on the property that meets a 10% lot coverage ratio. So in areas where there is approved non-accessory large vehicle, semi-truck, tractor, truck, and trailer parking, you need a building that covers 10% of the lot, which has also helped us in addition to the TID regs, kind of keep these honest, and we thought made a better site plan that you reviewed last month. So all those standards are there. That's a long way for me to say essentially we're just reorganizing the existing stuff that we have. And I wanted to, it's not finalized yet, so that's why it's not in front of ordinance, but also I wanted to hear, if you have any feedback, have you noticed anything about commercial vehicle parking that we should address? Other vehicle uses or things that you'd like included when we're kind of dipping into parking related uses in here.
Interesting.
And you don't have to have an answer for me today. I certainly wanted to open it up for discussion. Please think about it over the next month. We'll likely fine tune this and put it in ordinance form so it's in front of you next month. But if you have any notes individually, feel free to send them to Robin or I, and we'll look to include concerns, comments, things that residents bring up to you. I don't like parking lot X. We can go take a look at it and try to figure out why they don't like it. Yeah.
Interesting that, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of that project we approved last month, or month before, on I-94. And my comment then was, it's a shame that we have to have that right up against I-94. As a visual corridor. And then in the last couple, since then, I've been driving up and down I-94 and looking everywhere. And fortunately, I haven't killed anybody.
Swerving between.
Well, yeah, you know, oh, sorry, I'm a little, yeah, I've done that too. But what I noticed was obviously the amount of them that are along the I that either are just plain commercial buildings that are sitting empty, warehouse type stuff, which we've talked about, as well as the Rybar type developments. And I guess what I'm wondering is, or my thought process would be, when we're in those highly exposed areas, if we were to look at the site plans, is there a way of keeping that 10% structure closer to the road so they're actually looking at a building and setting up the site plans so that the parking and so forth is more in the back? Now, if they're gonna have fueling stations, they probably wanna make sure those are somewhat visible, because that's a revenue, that's a drive-by revenue. But for the parking and, you know, I guess in my mind, it would be great if we could try and keep some of that in the back so that the initial impression is of a building, maybe the fueling stations, but to create more of an aesthetic appeal.
Yeah, it's totally possible. Most zoning regulations accomplish that through like a build to line, where more often than not it'll say like you have to build within an area. There's like a minimum setback and a maximum setback, and that gives you kind of a buffer zone of you can locate a building within that strip of land. So we can look at those. I think my question for the Plan Commission, that response would be, using the truck parking last month as an example, you have the frontage road and the interstate on both sides. Which do you give visual preference to? My gut is always to give visual preference to whichever road is more local. So kind of the interstate would be the one you give least deference to, then the frontage road, then an arterial, then a collector. So buildings are, and then a local street. So buildings are always fronting a local street if there's a local and collector corridor, and you're just, you know, planners like to cheekily refer to them as car sewers. Like the bigger like a vehicle area is, it's closer to infrastructure than it is like something that looks nice. And so that's how we would interpret that and likely write that in, but we would have to be clear if it's a double fronted lot or a corner lot, which lot you give preference to.
Yeah, the one that we looked at that's a tough one because of its location. We saw that from the beginning. So I think, and because of that particular site has tremendous wetlands on it, they already were challenged from a site planning standpoint.
Yeah.
So close my eyes to some of that, you know.
Yeah, it's a good learning example, because that site had a lot of difficulties that they worked through. So it's, when you're thinking about regs over the next month, that's a good one to refer back to, because there were challenges for that. You know, for commercial vehicle parking, you have to have turning radii and stuff to get a truck in there, and they have to have appropriate ability to back into spots and all those kinds of things, which provide limitations to site plans. The question is, how much should we care about those limitations, and how much are them to creatively solve? There's a balance there. You know, we don't want to make it as absolutely easy as possible for them, because it's just smack stuff right in the middle and call it a day. So where do we draw those lines?
Yep,
But
thank you.
we can look at a build to line. I actually like that idea.
I mean, well, you know what
I think that's a good idea for the 10%, and we can just clarify that in there.
All right.
Just one question on this that I was going to bring up before. How do you define the difference between an intrastate and an interstate driver, truck driver?
out of state or all in state.
Well, I know, but what difference does that make if they're going to get fuel?
It doesn't really. Well, I didn't actually change any of the use
Okay.
definitions in here, but we can, it's a good reminder. We'll take a look through and try to clarify some of those. Part of this is an exercise for us to simplify our use tables. And so if there's use definitions, I mean, yeah, we're not going to be looking at people's driver's licenses and be like, hey, man, you're from Kentucky. Like this zoning regulation applies to you or not. Like, I don't think the cops are interested in that. So
I'll only say that an interstate truck driver facility would probably have more focus on showers or lodging and stuff. An intrastate truck driver would probably live in the area where their truck is based. It's like a home every night, and they advertise those in the jobs when they advertise them. It's like you could be home every night, you know. So
Yeah, but it wouldn't matter to us, which you're going to be driving a truck to get fuel. Doesn't matter.
not in that case, no.
we'll take it's a good reminder. We'll take a look through the use definitions and make sure that they are only regulatory where they need to be, or where the cops are going to understand what we're trying to accomplish if we ask someone to write a ticket.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one request to make after we're done talking about this last agenda item. Are we done talking about the last?
Yeah, no motion needed. So whenever you guys are done, we'll just get to the drawing board.
Just a request to the staff for your assistance. It's hard to tell where the packet goes from topic A to topic B, particularly when they're doing double-sided. So even on the same piece of paper, it's a transition from A to B, and you have so many exhibits that just continue. It's drawings, it's sketches, it's letters, I'm doing a lot of flipping, trying to tell where I go. If somebody could just insert a blank space or page between topics, that would just make it a lot easier.
Sure.
Thanks.
That's easy enough to do.
No problem.
Was it?
Well, speaking of the ideas,
It's all one-sided, but they aren't typically, Tom, you're right.
well, speaking of that, I had an experience where I was walking and I took my paper clip off and I had too many things in my hand, the whole package fell down. Can you imagine putting them back all together in that order? There's no page number.
I can't
Oh my
imagine
God.
because it's happened
Yeah.
to us in the back many a time.
Anyway to put page number or something or section, that would be,
It gets tough because we're consolidating a bunch of PDFs, but I can
just
talk
saying
to you after
that.
the meeting about it. It's like there's probably 50 PDFs in this packet that we've consolidated into a
it
single
happened to
thing.
me only
so
once, and
yeah.
I don't know, like Joe said,
There's a way to do it, but sometimes there's page numbers on page numbers and things like that. So we can talk through some options.
all you gotta do is, put that in the header or the footer, like item number and then kind of something, and then
Yeah.
automatically populate, because like, Commissioner Van Becken's, comment, then I wasn't going to talk about how sloppy I was, but then I thought, okay, maybe I should.
Just one other request to make.
Paper guys.
If down the road, staff, this is just personal to me, I don't know if other people are going to be interested, but going back a couple of years and over the years, Sam in particular and Robin, you've talked about how important it is for our housing stock to get more varied, add more types of homes, trying to give more options to residents, et cetera. My gut feel is that the village has made a lot of progress in that respect, given the number of projects that have come before us. But I guess I'd like, at a time of your choosing, maybe just give us a short report saying, here's where we are. We think we've made a lot of progress or very little progress in meeting the kind of housing stock that you fellows think that should be the goal for the
Yeah.
village. I guess I'd
We
like to get
do
that
an
feedback.
annual housing report. I actually owe it to you guys, so it's something that you can expect to see within the next month or two.
And if you could also maybe include in that, give us maybe some perspective vis-a-vis other similar communities. How are we doing in the area? Are we catching up to Oak Creek. You know, we stand ahead of Kenosha, and maybe you can't tell me that because you don't have that information.
Yeah, I don't pull generally that data because it's so varied and would be a really long project, but we'll see what we can do. There are some basic comparisons that we can look at.
You know, burden your, to the extent you're going to do it. And again, I don't know what resources you guys have. I don't know if it's a button push. Here's all this information, or it's, God, Van Beckham, curse him.
I know some commercial real estate guys, that would be the strings I would pull, but that's what that is.
Okay, well, you should obviously use your common sense as to what's appropriate, but I would love to get that kind of feedback, because also, I get that question sometimes from just neighbors, like, you know, hey, all this new development, wow. You know, and I'm thinking, I don't have any perspective to say, like, we're really humping along, or, well, we got a long ways to go. So thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I have a couple of news items, I think. You know,
Let's
they're not
talk-
reports, but they're news items.
Yeah, I mean, they're not on the agenda, so we should really wrap it up.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
All right.